Hello, everyone. This is Lee Andrews with another Live with Lee. And today I am featuring Sam Harper, who we met on LinkedIn, like so many of the people that we meet these days. Sam is a UX designer. He's also a constant contributor to Medium and is it UX Collective too, Sam?
Yes.
Okay, so if you haven't run into Sam, please do connect with him. He's so open and welcome to meeting new people in the UX domain. So please reach out to him. So before we get started, if you're not familiar with Akathame is the company that I represent, and we are an international marketing communications design, including user experience and customer experience talent. We are talent agents for that community alone, and we provide executive and direct hire search capabilities. So, Sam, let's get started right away. The half an hour is going to go by very, very fast. So we're going to we might get a little controversial here. So if you are watching, please put your comments in the comment section, whether you are on LinkedIn, YouTube, or Facebook. We are live across all three platforms. We will see your comments in here and we will respond as quickly as we can. If you are not watching this in the live format, you can certainly comment post on any of the recordings and Sam can answer questions from that point. So, Sam, you have a very unique background. Unique, actually not so unique in the marketing communications design space. This particular domain attracts a lot of creative talent. Mm-hmm. And you have a film background, right?
I do.
How did you go from film to user experience?
Well, what I say is that growing up, like so many people out there, I suffered from a case of I don't know what I want to do with my life-itis. And in high school, I took like a film class and I thought it was really cool. And my parents basically told me either go to college or join the military. And I wasn't really mature enough to be able to join the military. So I went to college and they had a pretty good film school. I went there for a couple of years. Growing up, I also had like this fascination with marine biology. I've had like a lot of fish and everything. And then eventually, as I realized that I don't want to work in Hollywood, I decided, well, I guess I'll do that other thing. And so I got my bachelor's degree in that. So I've got it in two completely different fields, which funny enough, I do feel like it has actually helped me quite a bit in my career. For example, the science background I've got, it's actually made me a pretty good at asking the right questions in user experience. Really understanding like how a study should be set up, what we should be looking for, how we should be course correcting. With film, I would say it really hit in that storytelling idea of being able to like kind of get in the minds of the people who are watching whatever you're producing. In this case, building some kind of website or software, and then and just really getting them engaged with that.
Interesting. So you've got a formal storytelling background in film, and you've got a formal training background in research and testing.
Yes.
So those two skills alone are highly required and preferred in the user experience domain. That's great.
Absolutely.
So, given that you're still you're under the 5-year mark, right? Within user experience, you've got about 3 years of practical experience in portfolio. So we brought you here today because you recently wrote an article about how someone new to UX can get started. And one of the things that you talked about was doing a project, like taking a look at their product and, making that part of your application process. And I think that there's a lot of people who are recommending that. And I would too, right? Especially in this domain. And if you have a limited portfolio. One of the things that you mentioned in that article though, and it said something about the job description required HTML. Mm-hmm. And so we talked about this before the call. What are your thoughts on these UX positions that require visual design, coding, research, testing, and becoming a masseur?
Oh boy. So those people that they're normally looking for don't really exist. And I think the problem with that is it sets an unrealistic expectation of what, especially new people who don't know any better, what they should be going towards. So it says, they say like, oh, we want you to be very well versed in UI. We want you to be very well versed in UX. We want you to like know like all these like back end programs. At some point, it's like you got to have a small team for that, not an individual person. That's unfortunately that doesn't still stop some companies from putting that out there. But I would also look at like what's the size of the company. So if it's a tiny little startup and they do need you to wear a lot of hats, that does make sense. If it's a company like Microsoft, they have no excuse. They got they got to hire separate people.
Well, that's interesting that you say that. So you think company size or capability size does matter?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at some point, like you can have a generalist, but if they're only okay or like reasonably good at like a few things, nobody can be good at everything. I've talked to people with 30, 40 years of experience in UX, and they say, I'm still not a master of everything and I'm still learning every day. I mean, as far as like if it's a startup and they're like in their early stages and they really just need everyone to like pool all of their experiences together, then that would make more sense. But a lot of these job postings that you see, like they're not from startups, they're from well-established companies.
Interesting. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. We're going to hold off on that for just a minute because the tides have shifted, and they shifted when you started taking classes. You're a graduate from a boot camp, is that right?
Yes, I am.
And you enjoyed that boot camp experience, is that right?
I did enjoy it. I would say that to be perfectly honest, it didn't do everything that it needed to do. It did give me a basic understanding of user experience. It gave me like a mentor who I worked with, but I had to do I felt like I had to go out and I had to do a lot outside of it. That's not necessarily blaming the boot camp because it does always fall on that person as to whether you're successful or not. But I was a participant in a competition for the X Prize Big Ocean Button Challenge, assembled a team of people to work with me, which by the way also tied in with my marine biology background, which was cool. And I was like looking for all these I found like a couple unpaid internships, and really what it comes down to, and this is what I tell anybody who's interested in a boot camp, is it doesn't matter what boot camp you go through. It could be like $1, something that was like a self-study that cost you $10 on Udemy, or it could be something that's like 20,000, like a $20,000 boot camp. That's a bit insane in my opinion. But really what it comes down to is like, are you learning the material? Are you getting the kind of mentorship you need? And are you really like taking on that responsibility of finding that role yourself, instead of saying like, oh, I paid, so-and-so, and therefore I should have like paid my way into UX, which is not really how it works.
Interesting that you say that, and I think that's a really good insight. So what are some of the criteria that you would have a potential boot camp candidate inquire about that organization before they sign the dotted line? What green for?
Yeah, so one of the things that I personally like is, do they have a money back guarantee? Now, I think it's kind of a weird thing to guarantee, considering they can't like forecast the market or anything. Like, for example, nobody saw COVID happening. But do they have some kind of guarantee that backs what they're saying? I think that's really important too. Also, do they have not only mentorship, but do they have good mentorship? Now, what I mean by that is look at the backgrounds of these mentors that they have, because sometimes what these boot camps will do is they will hire people who just graduated from their boot camp but don't have any experience. And I say, no, like make sure that these people have like played around in the sandbox for a bit in the real world before they come and start teaching. Obviously, another big thing too is like, does it fit your price point? Is it offering, like, does it have that kind of like offering of what you want? So like another reason I joined Career Foundry was because it was online at the time. I was working like average 60 hours a week in between two jobs, and I did not have time to go into like General Assembly. I also didn't have the money for it either, and it was like a fraction of the price, and it worked out really well.
And how do you know that worked out well? How did you judge that career foundry? Because these are really tough questions for
Yeah.
people to think through before they make that decision to plop down, thousands of dollars.
Yeah, absolutely.
How did you know that career foundry was successful and right for you?
Well, I felt that it worked out for me because I was, like I said, at the time I was working a full-time job and a weekend job. So I had like no days off technically. So General Assembly wouldn't have worked because I would have to drive down to, I was living in Colorado at the time. I'd have to drive down to the downtown Denver office, which would take maybe 30 minutes, 40 minutes in traffic. And then you park, go to your class for 8 hours a day, and then come home. And that didn't really work with my schedule. So I needed something that was flexible, that I could like work around with. I could just like work around my busy schedule, which worked great for me because in that full-time job I had, I would work like 3 hours and then I'd have a 2-hour break, and then I'd like work another like 3 or 4 hours and then go home. And I was just able to, instead of like having these structured, rigid class times, I could just open up my laptop and just work on that. Now, I will say that the downside of that is that I did not have that in-person connection that I think that these in-person boot camps really like, they're great at. You don't have like classmates surrounding you who are going through the same thing, who you can like interact with. You can't like actually, I mean, you get to know your mentor, but you don't get to know them like in person. So I would say that was the downside, but definitely like look at what this program's offering. Say like, are the upsides of this significant enough where it's going to overshadow these downsides and I can still make the most of it?
Nice. And so scheduling was your number one factor, right?
Yeah.
Cost seems to be a second factor.
Yes.
And you would say if you were to, if somebody isn't self-sufficient and self-containing and they need that network of human contact around them in a classroom, that would probably not be best for them.
Yeah. Well,
right.
Obviously in COVID, that's not really possible anyway.
Right. That's true. So let's pretend COVID is been here, done that, and gone. So in the future, online only might not be the best for some people if they really work better with that one-on-one in person. So maybe another option there. Okay, so talk to us about. So you graduated from Career Foundry.
Yes.
And then you went out looking for a job. This is when all the fun began.
Oh yes.
Oh yeah. So tell me, what was the number one challenge that you faced once you graduated?
I would say getting past those ATS bots. Because
okay.
Because your resume, I mean, Lee, obviously you're very familiar with like these ATS bots and and for those of you guys who don't know, essentially an ATS bot is like, imagine if you put out a job posting, okay, and you had 200 applicants and you're a recruiter, or you're a hiring manager, and you've only got maybe like an hour or two every day where you can look at these. You're probably not going to be able to look through all of these applications. So instead, and I'm not saying this is a perfect system, but it's unfortunately the game we have to play, is that they will filter all of these applications through an ATS bot, which basically, at least like from the best of what I know, it takes the job description and then matches it up in the resume, and then sees how much of a match it is, and then it'll throw out some resumes. So you could be a perfectly good employee, be like a fantastic fit for them, and it just gets pitched by the ATS bot. So I would say that was
an ATS bot, because it's like we're giving this thing human, actually, more AI than it might actually have.
Yeah.
So you're right. How do you get past the ATS, which is the first screening point, right? So ATS is called the Applicant Tracking System, for those of you who don't know. And it is when you submit your resume and your portfolio online, that is the tool that is between you and that recruiter, and the recruiter is between the ATS, you and the hiring manager or hiring managers. So you've got a couple of layers to go before you can get to that interview process level. So that's what what Sam's talking about here. So yeah. So you got frustrated with that, right? Did you ever call an employer and say your ATS is this online application process is awful, and I want to redo it?
No, I didn't do that, but I will say something that I did do that worked out quite well for me. So, really, and this goes back to what we were talking about, where you actually build some kind of project, or what I like to call it like a value add project. So think about if you're going to be applying for a job. I mean, especially for UX people. So this is like where you get to put on your UX hat. You're applying for this company, and this is a place that you really want to work at. Okay, so the example that I always refer to is when I applied to Home Depot, as they've got a lot of UX designers they hire in Atlanta. And the first thing that I did is I actually went into a Home Depot and I walked around. I looked at their checkout process. I got kind of a sample. Obviously, it's not a good sample because it was just based on like observation, but like a sample of the kind of people who are going in there. And then I was using their app and using it to like find things and taking notes based on like how effectively or ineffectively it was. And then I went over to the paint department and I introduced myself as someone who will hopefully get a job, who's going to redesign their internal software to make their jobs easier. And I said, can you help me out with this? And they were like, oh my God, yeah, our system sucks. Like, this is like, we have to piece this together and this doesn't make sense. And like, this is all a mess. And I just got a lot of really juicy notes. And what I did is I put that into a deck, and I talked about like the problems I saw in Home Depot, how I would solve it. Like, I even came up with like some wireframes and just made it like really, really nice. And then I sent it off, and that actually, I mean, that got me to talk to someone. That was, now I did write like a very detailed article about this called How to Increase Your Chances of Landing Your Next UX Job, Even If You Have No Prior Experience. I go into it in much greater detail, but the summary is, if you can really make sure that you understand the company that you're applying to, that you understand their problems, and you are positioning yourself in a way where like you are the solution to those problems, and I think you're going to be in a pretty good place.
So let's talk about that. Did you get that? Did you get a job offer from Home Depot?
No, I did not, but I got further.
Yeah, but that's
much further than I would have.
This is what strikes me the most about your tenacity, right? This is a skill that cannot be taught. This is something that I think everybody needs to hear about. You did this for 2 or 3 companies, if I recall, in that article, and you did not get the job offer. You did get as far as an interview or having a conversation with somebody, and yet you kept doing these value add projects.
I did.
Why did you just not say, this isn't getting me anywhere, so why should I do all this work? What kept you doing it?
Because it got me noticeably further in the interview.
There you go.
And because I really, like, when you've got no experience, like, it's hard to break in. I get it. I've been there. And you got to do like everything you can to get someone to finally say yes to you, which, and like I said, like, it's not an ideal process. It's unfortunately the game we have to play. So
let's back up here a second. So do you know why you didn't get the job even after you did the value add project?
Yeah, they said it was because I didn't have the experience they wanted at the time.
So I always have this battle with hiring managers when during the order intake, meaning position that's open. The first question I ask is not about experience. I always ask, what do you want to see in their portfolio or in their past performance that aligns with what you need to achieve now? Now. And I guarantee you that people with less than 3 years of experience will be able to have addressed that need. And so the conversation of how many years do you need is blown right out the window.
Oh, so
results that matter. I don't care if you're still in college. you could have achieved those results that they're looking for. So this is how you overcome that challenge. Say, would you rather have the years of experience or how I've helped, how I've actually made a big change? So that's one way to get around that. So let's talk about the next sticking point. You've gone and you've done this great value add project.
Mhm.
Are they still asking you to do a design challenge?
Are you talking about like for like a specific job?
Yeah, whenever you're applying, so you've applied for the job, you've had this interview, you did the value add project. Are they also asking you to participate in a design challenge?
Yeah, so for Home Depot, I didn't get that far. For another company that it's actually a software agency that's based in Boston. I did like a little value add project for them in the first interview, and then I did go to a design challenge after that. But the nice thing about that job was that essentially, they said put it together in a presentation, then we're gonna fly you out to Boston, and they put me in like a really nice hotel. It was like a $200 a night hotel, and then I walked over and did an 8-hour interview and presented my work and everything. So yes, I have had to do a design challenge.
What do you think about design challenges as somebody relatively new? So what did you think about those design challenges?
I think I understand why people are doing them. I wouldn't say it's necessarily like a perfect way to gauge how effective somebody's going to be in a particular job.
Why do you say that? Why do you say that?
Well, because sometimes I think soft skills get overshadowed quite a bit. You know, somebody could be an amazing designer. I've met people who are incredible developers, incredible SEO, incredible UX, or incredible graphic designers, and then they're just assholes. Yeah, like do you really want to like work with someone who it's like, sure, they might be good at their job, they might be a good individual contributor, but are they really going to be fun to work with, especially if they get in a manager position, and some people do.
Mm-hmm. And so what do you think a good solution is? This is fascinating now. So from your perspective, what do you think a good alternative is to a design challenge?
Oh boy. I think and I don't know if I really have the answer to this right off the top of my head. I would say the best thing is when Google's hiring, for example, one of the first things they're looking for is like they actually prioritize soft skills quite a bit. And I would say like really dive deep into like making sure, is this someone who you can like work with very easily? Is this someone who has like those teamwork skills that you're looking for? Is this someone who you can see promoting into a manager role later on? Now, design challenges and the skills and everything, yes, that's important, but unfortunately, I think they tend to overshadow like if this person is going to actually be a good team player.
Yep, I agree with you. I think the design challenge is the wrong way to go. It also opens up a tremendous amount of bias, unknown bias, undetected bias, unrealized bias.
Yeah.
And so my solution to that has always been work on a project with them, pay them to do real work with you. Maybe it's only a week or two, maybe it's a month, whatever it is. But if you really want to get to know if somebody's going to be a good fit for you and can do the job and is interested in actually doing the job, put them to work.
Oh yeah, and then you'll get to see their soft skills too.
That's right. How much time do hiring managers spend in screening candidates that don't work? The hire the right candidate, Sam, is a flip of a coin. Mm-hmm. The only way you're going to know if you're going to work well within an organization or with those people is to actually work with those people. So
yeah, that's a short-term contract role.
St. Lee's opinion there. So you are, I want to hear your absolute best advice for somebody who is new in the UX space. They have they just graduated from boot camp. They might have less than a year of experience. They're getting very frustrated. What would you suggest that they might think about doing differently? They've done the all online applying thing. They're trying the best that they can to link in with other people on LinkedIn, but they're still not getting connected. And they might even be doing the added value project, right?
Yeah.
what else would you suggest that they do?
It's a mental game. The
Oh,
single best advice I can give is that this is a mental game. So I actually wrote about that in my article, Some Sage Advice for Aspiring UX Designers from a bootcamp grad. And what I do is I equate it to like getting your first job. I kind of equate it to like a baby learning how to walk, right? So when you got a baby and the baby's like crawling around on the floor, they don't know how to use their limbs. That's kind of like where people start out as in UX, and then eventually the baby's like, oh, I got these little dangly things behind me, maybe I can stand on them, and then they kind of like stand up and then they fall down, and then they stand up and then they fall down, and then they stand up and fall down, but eventually they're kind of able to like, they get up and then they fall down, and it's like their body kind of like their motor skills, like they're learning how to stand a little bit more effectively the next time. And then they kind of like stand up and fall down and stand up and fall down. And eventually they're able to stand for a couple seconds and then they fall down. And then, then they're able to stand longer and longer and longer. And I kind of equate that to like for new UX designers, this is like when you're applying to these jobs and then you get rejected. And keep in mind, by the way, don't take it personally if you get rejected, because most of this it's not, a lot of them is not people throwing at your resume, it's bots. For that, there's a service I recommend called Resume Worded that I would definitely look into, where you can, it's kind of like, it is an ATS bot that you recruit on your side to show you what the ATS bots are looking at. But yeah, I mean, once you can eventually get an interview, or you can talk to a recruiter, you're like, oh man, I know I can get this far. And then even if you don't talk to the recruiter after that, then okay, fine. But you can at least get an interview, and then eventually you can get a recruiter call, and then you can get an interview with a hiring manager. And then, if you don't get that, fine. But that every single time you can get a little bit further. And it's just about building your confidence. And, with the baby, like eventually the baby's standing, but then they got the more complex motor tasks. Now they got to walk, and then they start walking, and then they fall down, but then they can keep getting up and just learning a little bit more and more and more. And then when you're applying for these UX jobs, you do keep getting further in the interview. You may not get that specific job that you went further into, but that you can get that much further. And unfortunately, I feel like a lot of the times these new UX designers who are getting really frustrated, that would be like getting mad because you can't get this job is like the equivalent of the parent standing over this baby and saying, no, you're stupid. Why can't you walk? You suck at this. It's like, that's not how you should be thinking about it. You should be thinking like, what are my wins? How far did I get in this other interview? At my one where I got flown out to Boston, like I didn't get that job, but at that time I remember standing in downtown Cambridge and thinking, my God, it doesn't even matter at this point if I got this job or not, because I know I have won. I know how far I can get.
Yep. I think that's great. So look at how far you got versus how far you didn't get, right?
Yes.
That's number one. And then what about leveraging when you finally got your first offer? Tell us, we've got less than 2 minutes left. Believe it or not, 30 minutes goes by that fast.
Wow.
In a minute or less, tell me, how did you get that first job?
It was really just traditional applying. And then also, okay, so tying in my background in the natural sciences is actually what was their deciding factor in hiring me. So I remember talking with one of the senior UI designers who was like, he was considering me, and he said, yeah, we had some other options, but they were like graphic designers, and we really liked you because you kind of came in with that research background. And what I see is that there's a lot of people who are making, in fact, more so than the people who are studying UX as undergrads, is the people who are making a career transition from something else. What I want you to remember is that we all bring some kind of really valuable skill that we can apply to user experience. Yeah. And it's so important not to discount that. If you manage people, for example, like that's a good sign that you can like you can work in teams, and eventually you can manage UX teams. If you're like in my case, I came from a STEM, I had some experience in a STEM background, and I worked as a field biologist in Alaska for a little while. That shows that I really know, I wouldn't call myself an expert at it, but like I understand how to set up the scientific method, how to really get like what we're going for. There's people from like social science backgrounds who might be really good at connecting with the people that they're designing with. Don't like use your background as your part of your selling point.
There you go. I can't believe it, Sam. We're at 30 minutes, and I think that's the right place to end it. Use what you've got. And the other thing is, Sam, I think that's wonderful that what you did is you are working with somebody who values what you bring.
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
more important. Had you been hired at these other locations, they wouldn't have looked at you the same way. So your portfolio may not have grown in the direction that you needed it to. So It works both ways. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. I don't think we had any questions. So if you do have any questions with the recording, reach out to Sam directly or me, and I will be happy to connect you to. You guys have a fantastic day. Sam, don't hang up while I end this broadcast. Have a great one.